Have you ever wanted to hire someone to kidnap a family member or a good friend, hold them hostage in a motel room and deprogram them? Yeah, me too. And that person is my friend Mike. Though he is intelligent and capable, Mike has walked a credulous path through life, and now he's a fucking moron. And Mike's route has been typical. He started out as a Bigfoot and alien sort of a dude, and then he got sucked further down the rabbit hole, so he had a 9/11 hoax phase, a bro science phase, a shadow government phase, and even a cosmic pizza phase. And currently, like so many who have come before him, Mike has come out the other end a very political, far-right person who thinks he's an expert in economics, government, and history. And what's even worse than that is that Mike thinks State Communications Officer Tim Pool is an honest intellectual with well-researched points. To be honest with you, when Mike told me about his love for the work of Tim Pool, I was even more grossed out than when he told me all about the Pizzagate lore, including Frazzle Drip. That's right, Tim Pool is worse than Frazzle Drip. But unfortunately for me, and unfortunately for Mike, kidnapping and deprogramming someone doesn't always work. And it's also not very nice. And it's pretty illegal. So I'm stuck making these videos and leaning into my own sickness that makes me think I can convince other people that their deeply seated beliefs are wrong. And not only that, but that their entire internal life of mind has been hijacked and now they have devolved into an evil minion doing lackey work for the empire. So this one goes out to Mike and the millions like him. Even though I'm pretty sure every time I send him one of these, he only pretends to watch it. All right, here we go. Deep breath. On a recent episode of the Tim Pool podcast, host Tim Pool used a persuasion technique called anchoring. And even if you think you don't know what this is, I promise you, you know what anchoring is. First, technically speaking, the anchoring bias or the anchoring effect is a cognitive bias in which people rely too heavily on the first piece of information they encounter when making judgments or decisions. That initial number, idea, or frame becomes a psychological reference point that pulls later thinking towards it, even when the anchor is irrelevant. In the real world, we see anchoring all the time, especially in sales. When we go to buy expensive items like homes or cars where the price is negotiable, we notice the asking price is too big of a number, and that's the anchor. We also see it when items are marked up and then offered at a big discount. We also see anchors at yard sales, flea markets, and Facebook Marketplace, where we can see items like this, a heavy-duty clothes rack made from some OSB board, 2x4s, and a shower curtain rod. And this thing doesn't look square. What's the price for such an item? $50. Is it worth that? Who knows, but that's the price. But I bet you this guy would let you talk him down $20 to $30, considering he'll probably end up breaking this shit apart and throwing it in the garbage next week.
It's trash.
Unfortunately, these marketing tactics work because putting too much importance on the first piece of info we are given is something all humans do. It's a flaw in our thinking that we all share. That's why even when we see something that has clearly been marked way up and then put on sale, in our heads we still go, oh damn, 60% off, they're practically giving this freaking thing away. And then, if we're having a moment of weakness, we talk ourselves into buying something at near regular price that we don't need. Hold up. What's this got to do with Tim Pool? Well, I'll tell you. Anchoring is also a tool used by podcasters who peddle and profit from ideas that are extreme, radical, and idiotic. Just like Tim. In a recent episode, Tim used anchoring to make an extreme idea seem practical and necessary. Watch this.
I'm very excited for this conversation.
Tim reports that the Supreme Court has ruled against Donald Trump's tariff policies.
The Supreme Court has struck down Donald Trump's emergency tariff powers in a major blow to his foreign policy trade negotiation leverage.
Tim likes the tariffs, and he thinks this ruling will be bad for the United States.
And I got to be honest, I'm going to cut right to the chase. I'm a huge fan of Trump's tariffs. I'm a fan of his strategies and plans on this one. I think ultimately this will be very, very bad for these United States.
Then Tim paints a quick picture of a downtrodden country in a state of emergency. He exaggerates the number of undocumented immigrants to make it sound more like an invasion.
But at the same time, our borders have been open effectively for a decade plus, and there are estimates ranging from 30 to 50 million illegal immigrants in the United States today. And many people might say, I thought it was 10 to 20. No. 10 to 20 million was the number given during the Biden administration when he opened up the border and flooded this country with non-citizens.
Then he says some Somalis committing Medicare fraud in Minnesota, much of which has already been prosecuted, is a crisis.
What it looks like Trump is doing, and I say looks like because it's hard to know for sure exactly what's going on, Trump recognizing that the American way of life is being eroded, You've got, as Tommy pointed out in the intro to the show, the Somali fraud crisis, billions of dollars from American workers and taxpayers being funneled by these Somali migrants and shipped off to Somalia. And it's happening in Ohio. It's happening in California. It's happening in Washington. It's happening all over.
So we started out with a ruling on tariffs, but Tim has brought it around to the subject that gets him more internet traffic: immigrants. And it is because of this manufactured immigrant crisis that Tim feels it is time for the conservatives on the Supreme Court to start siding with the president to save the country. In this next clip, you can almost hear Tim telling Justices Gorsuch and Coney Barrett that it was Donald Trump who put them in office, and their disloyalty is disgusting.
Our Supreme Court, the ultimate law of the land, ruled 6-3 against Donald Trump. Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Brett Kavanaugh agreed with Trump's right to issue emergency tariffs for under this law. Unfortunately for us, there are two conservatives who are more concerned with appearing factually correct as the sentence is written than doing what must be done to save your country.
He wanted them to find the interpretation that supports the president rather than ruling based on what is written and what is factual. Hey, that's totalitarian talk, Tim. But it's not to people like my friend Mike. I'll tell you what Mike does when Tim talks. Mike concentrates and downloads because he's trying to learn from Tim rather than thinking critically about what Tim is saying. And now that Tim has got the fear-mongering going, he's ready to throw out the anchor to help him make a crazy idea seem rational. In this case, his anchor is a timely little anecdote about honest Abraham Lincoln and all the excessive executive power the president had during the Civil War.
But I throw it to everyone's favorite president, Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln gets into office and starts cracking skulls. And I'm not even trying to be funny. The man literally pulls a bunch of troops in, says, we're not going to let the South secede. We're going to crush this, suspending habeas corpus, arresting politicians, arresting journalists, threatening to arrest a sitting Supreme Court justice. Lincoln said, this country will not fall under my watch. Now, as much as that's scary, Abraham Lincoln is the most popular president because in a time of great emergency, he used whatever power or maneuver he could to preserve the Union.
Tim knows that even though my main man Mike is still in a trance, ultimately Mike will never agree that America is at DEFCON civil war. Mike is not so cooked that he's going to start treading on the constitutional rights of Americans. So Tim backs off.
Now, I'm not going to say that we're at the exact same period in the United States.
Tim doesn't think we're there yet. He just thought he'd share a pretty neato burrito story about the most popular president and how he used to run the country like a dictatorship. So sure, we're not at a Civil War level crisis currently, but the way things are going, it won't be long. And now that we're all anchored to the great Abraham Lincoln's extreme use of executive power, Tim is free to slide back into his much more reasonable sounding point. Now, it's not as crazy to say that the country is in a pretty bad crisis. And at a time like this, the conservatives on the Supreme Court need to stay loyal to the president. They need to find ways to interpret the law that doesn't hinder Trump's agenda.
But when I see a Supreme Court say, you know, there is an interpretation that Trump could issue these tariffs to protect American interests, he says, well, you know what? I know the country's burning down. I know our working class are suffering. I know we're being defrauded, ripped off every which way. But the rules are the rules, so we have to let them do it. And this is the attitude, I think, of a dying nation.
Oh no, the country is burning down and the nation is dying. Gosh dang it. Maybe 2 of the 3 branches of government should form an alliance so we can cut out the 3rd branch and put some more control of the country in the White House. Maybe that's what we should do. And I know that sounds stupid and un-American, but unfortunately it makes some sense to my main man, Mike. If I ask Mike, should the president be able to imprison someone indefinitely with no trial? Mike would say, hell no. If I ask Mike, should the president be able to put opposition party politicians and journalists in prison? Mike would say, hell no. But if I ask Mike, don't you think the Supreme Court is kind of obligated to go along with the president's agenda, considering the country is in a state of emergency caused by the Joe Biden immigration crisis? Mike would say, they gotta do something, man. The immigrants are out of control. And now Mike has moved a little closer to being the kind of guy who can justify the cracking of skulls with the result it gets. Not good.
Lincoln gets into office and starts cracking skulls.
And that's how Tim Pool does it. He hypnotizes the feeble-minded, and he's a prick piece of shit, and I hate him. Please like, subscribe, and comment. If you're feeling generous, follow the link in the description and become a member. My name is Greb Kared, your ally in the fight against disinformation. Oh!